What's up, Dynamites? It's Kennedy from Dynamic Reactions, and welcome back to the level where we talk all things accessibility in gaming. First off, I want to start off this video by saying thank you for all the extra love on my Elden Ring video. A special thank you to Mischief for the shout out. I saw you guys' comments about wanting to learn more about sound cues and blind accessibility, and I took that and I called up a friend, super blind man, who you're gonna meet, and we made a video discussing everything that a blind person would need to navigate through Elden Ring, at least on his side of the blindness spectrum, which is total blindness, guys. He's an award-winning accessibility advocate, amazing human being. So I hope you guys enjoy the video. I hope it answers some of your questions. I hope you learn a lot. Be sure to leave a lot of love down in the comments. Check Brandon out. And yeah, let's jump into it. I'm really excited. Let's go. What's up, Dynamites? It's Kennedy from Dynamic Reactions, and welcome to the level where we talk about all things accessibility in gaming. I am here with a friend today, super blind man, and we're gonna talk about what it would take for Elden Ring to be blind accessible. Would you like to introduce yourself?
It's a big topic. Hi everyone, I'm Brendan Cole. I feel confident saying this now. I'm an award-winning accessibility consultant. There, I said it.
As you should.
I am most known for my work on The Last of Us 2, which I helped to make totally blind accessible to the blind all over the world. So it's something that I should take a lot of pride in. But it's not the end. I am not done. I am not nearly done. I have many projects in the works. I have worked on many other things that I can't talk about right now. But it's all good, and it's all for the cause of making the world of gaming a little more accessible to the blind. And that's why I'm here today.
So, what is your disability specifically? Like, where are you on the blindness spectrum? Because we know blindness is a spectrum.
Yeah, it's a question that probably should be asked more often. So I am totally blind, just to be 100% clear on that. My eyes are prosthetic, meaning nothing, no light perception, totally blind.
How do you play games? Like, what games do you lean towards when you're looking to play games?
I mean, obviously I'll try anything that's accessible, but I lean towards games that kind of are naturally accessible. The most accessible game genre for the blind is fighting games. They're kind of the most naturally accessible genre of games. Because most fighting games take place on a 2D plane. Even if the graphics are 3D, it's usually a 2D plane. Mm-hmm. You're usually right across from your opponent. There's never any question about where your opponent is. You just know they're on one side or the other of you. And audio is usually enough to tell you which side they're on and how far away they are. So fighting games are kind of naturally accessible. I do tend to lean on those a bit, but these days I've been playing a lot of games that have been modded or designed with accessibility in mind. So
that's really cool. So, in Elden Ring, how would we apply those things? Because I've been getting a lot of comments about I could never see a completely blind person play Elden Ring, and obviously me being a person that's into the audio world of like games and things like that, I know that audio is the first step in terms of
audio is the first step,
accessibility for y'all. But what necessarily would you need in a game like Elden Ring to be able to navigate and play freely?
Yeah, it definitely is a big topic. It's not something that could be done easily. I'll fully admit that, and I'm the first to admit that designing for blind accessibility is not an easy task.
Right.
But I do believe it could be done, and I do have ideas of how to do it. So step one would be, as you said, audio, but I would start with narration. Mm-hmm. Narration of every single text element in the game, and I'm talking about any bit of lore that comes, that you can see on an item, every message even left by another player should be readable with text-to-speech.
Yeah.
Every single thing, every text element, every menu in the game should be narrated by text-to-speech. Everything. Nothing should be left out that is text, because the blind should have access to all the information a sighted person has access to. So that's step one. Step two would be probably, honestly, jumping over audio cues for a second. I think step two would be navigation focused things. Now, when I bring up navigation, I actually want to stress a point before I really get into how I would do it. It's kind of a double point. So here we go. When I work on a game, when I try to make a game accessible to the blind, I personally am not trying to design an easy mode.
Right.
I do not want the game to be easy. I want the game to be as challenging as it's supposed to be. I just want to be able to play it, and there is a difference.
Right.
So, but that said, and this is where the double point comes in, that said, I also acknowledge that for some, difficulty is an accessibility feature.
Right.
So, simply making a game too difficult is a problem for some who just cannot deal with high difficulty.
Right.
And that's fine. You know, I think I do think that these things should be addressed in Elden Ring and every other game as well.
Yeah.
But personally, when I'm going for blind accessibility, I don't design for ease. I just design to try to preserve as much of the experience as I can from the original project. So, going back to navigation, the big thing about Elden Ring is that it doesn't hold your hand. There is no, go this way to go to your next objective. You have a lot of freedom of where you want to go. So if I was working on Elden Ring, I would not approach Elden Ring the same way that I approached, say, The Last of Us 2. In The Last of Us 2, we literally have a button that turns the camera towards your objective. You press it, you walk forward, you're going to head in the right direction. Great. That navigation style works for that game because it's basically a linear game.
Right.
But Elden Ring is not like that. So I wouldn't approach it the same way. What I would do for Elden Ring is a couple of different things. I would have a kind of navigational assistant, but what that navigational assistant would do is more point you towards the nearest unexplored area. Some basically point you toward an area that you haven't yet been to. Not necessarily your objective, because there is no one objective. Just an area that you haven't necessarily explored yet. Once you had done that, I would have a system of scanning where you could scan for things that are nearby that you could, ideally, the scan wouldn't be more than the player could see. So, like, if you scanned and you got a bunch of pings on the scan that meant, there's some loot that's nearby, you could maybe try to, start tracing your way towards that. Again, you could use pathfinding here as well. One of the concepts from The Last of Us 2 would apply here, where you could start pathfinding to a scanned thing. Like, okay, I've decided I want to go try to get this. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy to get to, but pathfinding will help you get there. Elden Ring has, and all the FromSoft games are infamous for having, falls to the death and a little bit of platforming in some areas.
Yeah. And
that would have to be addressed too. There would have to be additional scans for first of all, there'd have to be a ledge guard, and I loosely use the term guard because again, I don't want to make it easy. If we're if there's a chance we could fall to our deaths, then we should be able to fall to our deaths. There should be opportunity for failure here.
Yeah, just like a tiny little bit of edge locking, maybe like some little sound assistance to be like, hey, this is a moment where you're gonna like fall over this thing.
I would say in Elden Ring, not much with the actual edge locking, because again, we want the challenge,
right?
But we would need some sound indication of a ledge because let's face it, like you might criticize you sighted people out there, but you can see a drop when there's a drop,
right?
So. We would still, I would request still a sound notification of a drop, and maybe some sort of way to indicate how far the drop is, unless that information is not available to the sighted. Like for instance, if you can look down and you can see the floor below, and you know that you could safely land if you jumped off this thing, then we should know that same thing in some way, shape, or form. And you could do that with audio cues. Right. There would also need to be a way. If an item was, say, above you or something you wanted to get to was above you, we would also need to be able to scan for platforms as well, because if we're going to jump onto platforms, then we're going to need to know that they're there. In The Last of Us 2, again, this isn't so much a concern because the pathfinding is just going to take you to where you're supposed to jump in the first place.
Right.
But to preserve the challenge of actually getting a thing that you want to get, I would say just kind of have a scan that looks around and says, yes, there is a platform, and a way to find it. And when we get to that platform, maybe then provide us a jump cue that says, hey, you're here. Now that you're here, press jump and forward and you'll jump on this platform,
Right.
something of that nature.
Yeah, I think back to the tutorial when it's literally one of the first things that you have to do after going to talk to this NPC. He's like, jump in the hole. You wouldn't know that because there's no sound
exactly.
Yeah,
there's no sound. There's no sound for that, and that particular one, I believe the sighted player is not given any clue that you will survive it.
Yeah, no, there was none.
which is fine. Fine. Like, I would want that too. I would want, so in the tutorial, in the very beginning there, because it is the information the sighted person receives as well, I would want the audio cue for that hole to be like, this is death. This is an infinite hole of death, and you will die. Because the sighted person doesn't know either, because you can't see the bottom of that thing. So that's the same information we should receive.
Yeah,
that's what I'm going for. Just parity of information. So yeah, that's a good example of how that would work.
Yeah, when I talked about the different types of ways that you guys can navigate in my comment section, I brought up the idea of having a quest log, because I know Elden Ring does not have a quest log, and I was wondering if just a simple tracking system that y'all could use with text-to-speech would allow y'all to keep track of certain treasures that you find that you want to go towards. Or maybe just be like, hey, I want to go towards this thing. Let's mark it on the map, and then we can come back to it later, sort of navigation system setup.
Elden Ring did, in a patch, add a feature where you can mark things yourself. And that would be what I would do. I wouldn't do anything additional, because Elden Ring itself does not want you to, if that makes any sense. The quest log is meant to be very loose, and I would still advocate for, again, keeping as much of the experience as possible. So I would actually say, believe it or not, I would actually say no. I wouldn't want any additional help aside from what we need to play the game.
Right.
Than the sighted person has. So if the sighted person does not have a quest log, then I wouldn't want one.
Right.
It would be difficult, but that's the point, and I understand that that's the point. Now, the ability to mark things on your map yourself would be something that we would definitely use, and I would that kind of brings me to the next point that I would make about Elden Ring, which is that the map itself needs to be accessible.
Yeah.
And that is a difficult thing to do, because it would involve some serious recoding. But the map would basically need to be turned into a list of navigatable points instead of moving a cursor over a map, which it was very difficult for a blind person to do because we can't see a cursor, you know, and we can't. It's difficult to pinpoint one little part of a map to click on the right thing. The ideal way to handle that would be to allow us to have kind of an interactive list of the available points that we can move to on the map with their appropriate names. So, for instance, I know that in Elden Ring you can fast travel between the sites of grace that you find. Turn those into a list. Allow us to read the list and give us, via the names of the travel points, an idea of where that will take us.
Right.
And then we'll go from there. Then we'll use our find the nearest unexplored location or whatever to move on in that area. Then with the things that we choose to mark ourselves on the map once we found them, turn those into a list as well. Maybe when you bring up the map screen with accessibility mode on, or whatever you want to call it, you have two choices. You have Sites of Grace or markers, and you go to markers and you choose the marker that you marked earlier, and then what it will do is it will pathfind you to reach that point because you marked it. I have no problem with incorporating full nav assist once you've marked something yourself.
Right.
Just getting back to a thing, absolutely let us nav assist there because it makes sense.
Mhm.
If you mark something yourself and you're going back to it as a sighted person, you're going to follow that waypoint that you're seeing on screen. It's the same. It's the equivalent thing for us. So
Especially if you want to grind and like beat a certain boss up per se multiple times, you want to be able to find those spots and get those
yeah,
things that you
yeah,
want to get. Yeah.
yeah. And we may be creating multiple markers. Like I could see us marking little things like I don't know, like this is the door that leads to this boss. I've gotten here once, and now that I've gotten here once, I don't want to have to worry about going to the nearest unexplored location over and over and over and over and over again.
Right.
So let's just mark it, and we'll get back here easily.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
so I can see us, doing that, or like even marking like this is a dangerous drop. I died here once,
Yes.
you know. So like, but if you mark that, then you can you kind of have an idea. Like so another thing I would want to do is report when you reach a marked location too.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be fair.
Yeah.
So like if you were walking around in a level as a blind person and you happen to reach that dangerous drop that you marked because it is dangerous,
Yes.
then why not just let you know? Because no matter what, the fact remains, as good as Elden Ring looks from what I'm told,
Yeah.
we still can't see it.
Right.
So we will never have the moment where a location looks familiar. And so yes, we do need, I guess what I'm saying is it's the balance. It's the balance between playability and accessibility that you're trying to find when trying to preserve the experience.
Or even like a sound cue for the blood stains as well, because like if you die after falling off a certain point, the blood stain pops up.
That's
Y'all
a requirement.
Yeah,
that's a requirement. We need that.
Yeah, y'all have no way of knowing whether a blood stain is something that's happening because of another player or because you fell on it if you run across it.
Yep, we need one of those.
Yeah.
And maybe even I would probably support pathfinding to your bloodstain as well. I know that's a little much, but
yeah,
it's one of those things that I would take as a concession. And the reason I would take it is because ultimately, if you're a sighted person playing the game, when you die, you respawn at a nearby point, and you probably looking around you. You probably know where you died. You probably know which way to go to get to your bloodstain to get your runes back. You probably know that because you looked around. You've as you've been playing, you've been familiarizing yourself with the terrain and so on and so forth. So you know where you're going. So I think I would advocate probably for some pathfinding to your bloodstain if you had died, as well as an audio cue to indicate where it is. Just because we just don't have that. It's hard to convey this to a sighted person, but the reason that pathfinding becomes such a necessity in these games, and obviously what I'm talking about is utilizing it in a bunch of different ways in a bunch of different situations.
Right.
But the reason it becomes so essential is simply because we cannot look at the environment. We cannot familiarize ourselves with the there's this tree that's here, and then there's a rock that looks like a human head, and we will see none of that.
Exactly.
So we don't have those same landmarks. So that is why the pathfinding concession in certain situations is a necessity.
Right.
I'm fine with no primary objective. I think we can make that work. But I think that we need a little bit of help, and that is where that comes in.
Since there are like multiple endings and things like that, primary objective means.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
As far as boss fights and mini boss fights in combat go, how do you feel about how it is currently set up sound wise? Have you seen any of the fights?
So I have listened to some. And I have noticed, and maybe the sighted people just aren't noticing this, but I have noticed that many of the bosses have very clear audio tells for when their attacks are coming.
I've noticed that too.
Yeah, some of them have, for instance, some of them have very clear roars that always mean one particular attack is on the way. Mm-hmm. And then you can work to avoid that. And I haven't, it's one thing I don't know for sure, because I haven't actually tried to play it myself, because I really couldn't get anywhere in that game right now.
Right.
But I don't know how good the audio panning is, so I don't know if we could use that information to dodge the attack, or if we would need an additional dodge cue. So I can't answer that right now to any specific degree. I know, though, that there are some enemies that are fairly quiet. I was listening to someone play in an area that had enemies that are very quick and quiet and cartwheel around the area. I don't know what they're called, but apparently they do cartwheels all the time. And
I don't think I've seen that one.
so, yeah, I don't know what they're called. So I couldn't tell you any more than that. But the person I was watching said they were doing cartwheels like crazy. So I didn't notice an attack sound for them. I think because they're intentionally supposed to be very quiet. Maybe the idea is that if they hit you really hard, and they hit you really fast, and you have no idea what just happened.
Right.
In order to, I don't know. See, it's difficult because I haven't heard this in an actual game environment, because I can't play the game, so I can't get to this point.
Right.
There's a chance that maybe we wouldn't need any help here, because maybe, just maybe, the sound of their footsteps, even if they're quiet, or the sound of their cartwheels, maybe there is enough there. If
Right.
that is appropriately stereo panned, if that is appropriately, in the right channel, that you know where they're coming at you from, then maybe it's not an issue. Maybe we have the same, but that's what it's going to come down to for combat. It's all about audio. It's all about do attacks properly pan in the stereo field, or the virtual surround sound field. Even that'd be even better if it was virtually surround sound. Do attacks properly place themselves in those fields so we can hear them? And if they do, great. We might not actually need much help with combat,
Right.
as long as we're aware of where. Because I know in combat you're not safe from falling to your death either. So as long as we're still aware of where edges are, as long as that sound cue exists, maybe, just maybe, we don't actually need combat help.
Right.
Believe it or not. But it's not something that I can test very easily. So sadly, I can't fully answer that question, because if I was really working on Elden Ring, a lot of this would come with, play testing, very careful observation, and things like that. So this discussion is the best I can do off the cuff and based on what I know and what I've heard other people play. But yeah, so there's a chance we would need some help, but there's a chance we wouldn't, and that might be difficult for a sighted person to accept. But there it is.
Right.
There is a chance that a blind person may not even need help with combat.
Yeah. I appreciate you for coming on to talk about this with me.
Yeah.
As soon as people started requesting it more in the comments, I was like, oh, I know who I'm gonna call for this.
Yeah, definitely. Like I genuinely hope that people watch this, and I hope that they kind of take on a new perspective, and they realize that what we're trying to do may not be what they think we're trying to do.
Right.
And also that all we want to do is play games. If that game is very difficult, cool.
Yeah.
Bring it on. As long as I can play it, then we'll do it. And then there's a lot of ways we can make that happen. And would it be complicated? 100% it would. Absolutely it would. Especially with Elden Ring. The thing is, the idea that Elden Ring will now become accessible is not very possible, not very likely anyway, because patching in accessibility is much more difficult than creating accessibility in design from the ground up.
Right.
So I don't expect Elden Ring to become playable, but if I was working on it, and if I could make it happen, those are the things I would do.
Yeah, in future titles, hopefully. It's like someone in my comments said one time, we all just want the ability to be able to get our butts handed to us equally. That's all.
Right. Exactly.
Yes.
I want the same. Here, look at it this way. Look, here's a way to look at it. Right now, if we take Elden Ring right now, it is not just difficult for me to play. It is impossible for me to play.
Yes, same.
Would I die? Yes, I would. I know everyone dies in Elden Ring, but I would die all the time.
Right.
I wouldn't get anywhere. The way you should look at it is, right now, my rate of failure would be 100%.
Yeah.
100%. Now, what accessibility does is hopefully lower that rate of failure, not below what another person would experience, but to the same level. That's the ideal, you know?
Yeah.
That's how you should look at it.
Putting things on the level as we stay over here on the YouTubes.
That's right. That's right. On the level.
But yeah, thank you for coming to talk with me. I appreciate you as always.
Anytime.
You guys be sure to give Brandon a follow on the YouTubes. You have YouTube, right? And the Twitch. Super
I have YouTubes, yes.
On YouTube and Twitch and Twitter as well.
And Twitter.
He's on all of the things, creating accessibility in some of your favorite games. I'm pretty sure. I don't know what all he's working on, but I'm sure it's lovely.
Stuff. It's all right. I'm making stuff happen.
Right.
But yeah, I'm Super Blind Man everywhere, and I'm always happy to answer more questions and talk about this stuff with anyone. So, you know, reach out if you want to ask me more, and I will answer more. And that goes for anyone. So.
If anything happens in the comments, I'll be sure to hit you up just in case you want to come down and say hello to the peoples. All right, y'all. Thank y'all for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, send Super Blind Man some love, and do not forget that you deserve accessibility that's on the level. All right, bye.
Yeah.